What is good, my lawn care nuts? JB here, and as promised, here is my video outlining. That's better. Sorry, I've had a couple beers today. Um, Outlining the 2021 program I'm going with for my lawn. So this is relatively similar to what I did this year, which I'm very happy with, but I am modifying the product selection to utilize my local vendor, my guy over at Advanced Turf Solutions, Ryan Benson. All these products I'm obtaining from him. If you need any of these products, reach out to Ryan. The prices I have here are pretty much the same prices you'd be able to get. I think they have special pricing set up for our group. So just feel free to reach out to him and he'll get you squared away. But here's the program. I don't want to make this too long, but I'm going to run through each column here and what I have and why I have it. So first off, I have a couple different builds in here. As you can see, I've got my Barrow 2020 build, which is everything I put down this year. And then I have the grass pad build, which is everything grass pad would suggest for my yard, as well as the Scott's program, which is everything Scott's would suggest for my yard. The timings, what's getting included, all that fun stuff I have tracked. So using all that data and what I've learned from this year, I built my next year program. So, so this is my Barrow 2021 version 3 build. I've gone through a few different iterations of this. It's based on my zip code. So a lot of this data for the weather is based on the 64089 zip code. And I have 8,000 square feet of property that I'm maintaining. So all of these numbers are calculated based on treating 8,000 square footage of property. So if you got exactly 8,000 square feet, this may be a program for you. If you have more than that or less than that, then I wouldn't identically mimic this. You may need to modify it a little bit. If you're in the 4,000 square foot range, all this crap gets cut in half. If you're twice this or 1.5 times this, then the numbers will have to be adjusted accordingly. But regardless, I'm dealing with 8,000 square feet, and the next thing I did was set up a calendar, so to speak, for the lawn care maintenance. So I split the year up into really 2 sections per month. So as you can see, we have January 1, then January 15th, February 1, then February 15th, so on and so forth. And I was able to reference the historical temperature data for both the air temperature and soil temperature. And this air temperature is over the 24-hour period. So it isn't daytime or nighttime. This is, on January 1, the average temperature within 24-hour period is going to be about 29 degrees. And the average soil is going to be about 25. So a little bit colder than that. So that's how these numbers are calculated. And I then took that data and I used it and coupled it with research on germination and grass temperatures. What are the best temperatures where grass grows and that seeds germinate. And I put a few quotes in here. So, we can see, although the optimum temperature range for rooting differs a little bit amongst turf grass species, most cool season turf grasses, which I have all 3 of them in my yard. I have bluegrass, I have turf type tall fescue, and I have perennial ryegrass. So in general, they grow best when the soil temperature is between 50 and 65 degrees. That's quote number 1. And then quote 2 from a different source backs that up. Daytime temps around 60 to 75 typically means the soil is between 50 and 65, which is the perfect time for seed germination. Although if the soil is much lower than 50, the seeds will be dormant and not germinate. So those key temperature ranges I wanted to apply here. And the one last note is, crabgrass preventer should be going down before the soil reaches the 55-degree mark for about 3 days in a row. So you want to get that crabgrass preventer down before that particular temperature range. So visually, here's how that works out. We can see that going into January 1, the average soil temperature is like 33 degrees. So nothing's going on. Cold heart. There's the roots and the grass aren't really doing much when it's frozen outside. January 15th, same thing. Now February, we start warming up. We start to get out of freezing and we start to warm up a little bit to where the soil temperature is riding around an average of 33 degrees. Then we slowly go up from there. So 33, then to 34, 37, 45. Now hang on. Here we start getting to the sweet spot. If we remember, turf season grasses produce the best root growth between 50 and 65 degrees. So we're at 45 degrees, but here within the next month, we're starting to touch that 55 degree number. So, or 50 degree number within the next couple months. So we want to keep that in mind. Between here, April 1st and April 15th, I'm going to be averaging that 50 degrees. So that's going to be the prime time to get the germination going. Not saying it can't happen a little sooner, but this is the sweet spot. So we could see we go in February 1, we're cold. We start to get a little warmer. Now's the time, March 15th, when the average soil temperature is about 45, that we want to do a few things. So number one, it's kind of a prime time to put down any seed if you want to overseed, with an asterisk on the side of that. And the reason I put an asterisk on is because usually if you're putting down crabgrass preventer, you don't put down seed at the same time. You do one or the other, or you make a different plan. But the product I'm using utilizes mesotrione, which is tenacity, instead of the traditional products such as prodiamine. And the cool thing about mesotrione is, number one, it's seed safe, and number two, it could work as a post-emergent. So there are kind of some cool aspects of mesotrione which appealed to me, which is why I've put it into this program for this year. So on March 15th, going into next year, if I needed to do any seeding, that would be when I would do it. I would put down my fertilizer. So I've decided to go with an Anderson's product, which is a 21-22-4 product. And, this particular product's, ideal for when seeding, overseeding, sprigging, etc. The key thing is it's got a lot of nitrogen. It's got a lot of phosphorus, and it's got a lot, or not really a lot, but it's got some potassium. But this second number is what you usually find relatively high in your starter fertilizers, because that drives root growth. So we want to get that down so as the seeds germinate and as we get into the ideal temperature range for seed or for root growth, that we've got that set up as best as possible. So the product I chose to, I'm buying one bag of that and I'm putting it down at a half rate. So I'm putting down a half bag of that on March 15th, which is going to be my first fertilization of the season. And that's going to be a ½ pound of nitrogen. Now, one thing I'll keep in mind is that the same thing I did in 2020 is I've ran a relatively solid ½ pound of nitrogen the whole season. So if we look at this, as I go down here, March 15th, ½ pound, April 15th, ½ pound, May 15th, ½ pound, June, July, August, September, October, every one of those months, there's a ½ pound of nitrogen going down, which is a little different than some of the other programs. Some of the other programs which have you putting down products less often, you put them down in larger numbers. This first treatment, instead of being a ½ pound, maybe 1 pound, but you're not doing all these other applications. So there's going to be these big ebbs and flows of fertilizer hitting your lawn, where with this program, you're sort of keeping a steady amount of fertilizer throughout the growing season, which has worked pretty well for me so far. And I think is just fine to do. I think a lot of the other programs, have them much higher because it's simple. You're not putting down product every 2 weeks. You're putting down a product once every few months. If I look at the Scott's program, for instance, it has me putting down their crabgrass preventer in April. But look at this, I'm putting down 1 pound of nitrogen. And then I'm not doing anything for a month and a half. And then I'm putting in another pound, and then a half pound, and then 1 more pound in the fall. So we're putting down similar amounts of nitrogen, actually a little bit more, but we're just spreading them out to continuously feed the lawn. Instead of giving it one big meal here in April and then not giving it anything until the second half of May, this program that I'm working on sort of continuously feeds the lawn throughout the season, which has worked well for 2021, or 2020. So there's no reason for me to change that for next year. So, continuous steady amounts of nitrogen, with the only difference being the last treatment of the year, which is on November 15th. We're putting down 1 whole bag of this product, which gives me 1 pound of nitrogen. And the reason for that is that, this is the last feeding. Then we're going to have all of December, all of January, all of February, and then half of March when there's not going to be any food hitting the lawn. So this is the last feeding of the year. So I'm sort of putting up the, feeding the lawn as best as I can to cover it throughout the winter season. So let's look at the products again. So Mesotrione, starter fertilizer of Mesotrione. This does a couple key things for me. When I put it down on March 15th, this product will work as a pre-emergent. The Mesotrione will keep the crabgrass away. It will also work as a post-emergent, even though I shouldn't really need much of that on March 15th, but it has that feature, and we'll get into that more in a second. And then all of these Anderson products have a decent amount of iron and sulfur in them, which is pretty handy. Both of these sort of benefit the grasses and help get you that dark green color. So it's nice to see the added benefit of iron and sulfur. I don't really track those per se, but they definitely aren't something that I would shy against if the product has them in them. I actually do like products that have the iron and sulfur added into them. More specifically, the iron. The sulfur kind of comes along for the ride, but the iron has been pretty nice addition so far this year. So we put down half a bag of this. And why am I putting down a half a bag? Well, first off, I don't want to hit the lawn with 1 pound of nitrogen because I want to keep that steady rate. And secondly, since I'm using the Mesotrione, which also works as a post-emergent, I'm going to hit the other half of the bag a month later. So here on March 15th, if I want a seed, cool. If I don't need a seed, that's fine. But regardless, putting this down will give me a boost with the phosphorus, with the phosphorus to the root growth that's going to be coming into prime time here real shortly. So that's a nice bonus. And then I'm going to follow it up a month later with the other half of the bag. So a month later, we still, on April 15th, there could be some weeds that are just now starting to emerge, or there could be some that have already emerged. And that's what's pretty slick, is that putting down the Mesotrione will help combat the pre-emergence of new crabgrass that hasn't popped up yet. Plus it will help with the post-emergence of some of the other weeds that have already started. And this isn't something I've dreamt up. If we look at the grass pad program, the grass pad program does something similar. On March 15th, you put down Prevent, which has a pre-emergent. And then on April 15th, a month later, you put down their Weed and Feed, which has a post-emergent. But the Mesotrione can kind of do both tasks. So that's kind of a neat thing that'll be interesting to try out, is that see how well it does at doing the pre-emergent and post-emergent control in 2021. So we're going to put down the Mesotrione half bag on March 15th. Then we start the following on April 1st, which is 2 weeks later, we start to do our bifenthrin. So bifenthrin, I started using this year and have gone through a few different iterations of the application. First, I started using the Walmart generic product, Eliminator, which had a little bit less. It was like 0.10 grams per 1,000 square feet, or per, what is it, per pound? I'm not sure how they calculate that. But it was 0.01, where the Anderson's product is 0.015. So it may seem small, but that's a decent increase when you're talking that small of a decimal point. Plus, it's a higher quality product, so the granules are a nicer product. So for 2021, I'm going to extend the treatment period out, and I'm going to apply it on April 1st. I'm going to do a half bag of the bifenthrin, which is pretty much a full rate. So it's the max rate you want to apply for 8,000 square feet would be a half bag on April 1st. And then I'm going to ride that out. So April 1st, I put it down. May 1st, none. May 15th, none. Then again on June 1st. So 2 months later, I come back in and I apply bifenthrin again. So I'm really using, the bifenthrin, some documentation say apply it every 30 days. Other documentation says, hey, it's good for up to 90 days. So with 2 months, we're kind of in the middle. We're at the 60-day marker, and that's what I'm going to ride out all season. So April 1st, bifenthrin. June 1st, bifenthrin. August 1st, bifenthrin. October 1st, bifenthrin again, and the October treatment is going to be the last one for the year. So by applying that, which is in essence, I mean, it's the same stuff as 7, but the bifenthrin is the active ingredient. That should cover my lawn from bugs for the majority of the season. Now, it's not going to kill every bug, but it's effective against mosquitoes. It's effective against chiggers. And at least I've got something going down on a continuous basis, so there aren't any gaps in the program. And the thing that I noticed with, for instance, the Scott's program, Scott's also uses bifenthrin, but you're only applying it once, and you're applying it on July 1st. Their Summer Guard has bifenthrin. So if you're out in the yard from April, May, June, enjoy all those bugs, because with the Scott's program, you're not really putting down anything until July, and then you're hoping that July treatment lasts all the way to the end of the year, which it won't. So, that's one advantage, is that we're using the same product, but we're using it throughout the season to sort of keep the bugs in check and keep it, at least the yard, more enjoyable by pets and humans. I got a fire pit out back. So if we're out hanging around the fire pit, I don't want to get ate up by chiggers and by all sorts of stuff. So I want to keep the bugs in check for the whole season, which is why the bifenthrin is there. So now we move on to April. So a month later, we put on the other half bag of mesotrione, fertilizer combo. No big deal there. The handy thing with this is, since it does have post-emergent control, if there are any weeds that happen to pop up by April 15th, it should help knock those weeds out without having to do any manually spraying. Now, I am not going into this program or planning on not having to do any weed control, at all beyond this. I do know, some weeds are going to pop up. I'm going to have to do some spraying on occasion, but this should set me up as good as possible to minimize the weeds as much as I can. So mesotrione. Then we start to layer in some humic. So humic is something I'm a big fan of after this year. I've been doing quite a bit of research on humic acid. Started to add it to my lawn in 2020. And here are some of the crazy benefits for it. It improves your soil conditioning. So it retains water and nutrients better. It stimulates root growth and promotes plant cell division, increases carbon production, helps aerate the soil, helps the soil structure, so big hard blocks of soil, the clay, the sand, all that stuff in there. It helps make it just a better environment by applying it. It improves germination rates. It can help levelize the pH. So if you're jacking with trying to keep your pH up and down, which is a fool's errand anyway, it helps sort of keep that pH level at a neutral zone. And it also helps increase the beneficial microbial activity within the soil. So there's lots of advantages to humic acid. The disadvantages are it's kind of expensive. So, putting down one bag of this Anderson's Humic DG runs me $55. But humic acid doesn't go away. So as you add it over time to your soil, it's just going to sort of improve the soil. It shouldn't, wash away and be gone and, not exist a year from now. But you can also, you can really apply as much as you want till your budget allows, which is what I had to keep in mind. With this $404, we have two bags of the Humic DG applied throughout the season. And those are sort of bonus items. And you see, those two bags, that's $110. So if you didn't want to do any amending of your soil, you could strip that down and reduce your, cost per year down to about $300. But all of the benefits of humic, if I'm spending all this money putting the products down to grow really good grass, I might as well spend some money to make sure the soil is in as good a shape as possible based on what I have here. So we're putting down humic at this time because there's really nothing else to put down. We're getting into the season where, the microbial activity is the most rampant when the soil temperatures are high. So putting this stuff down earlier in the season versus later in the season seemed to make sense. So we're putting a bit of humic down at this time. Then we enter May. So May 15th, we're now 1 month past the second application of the starter fertilizer, the pre-emergent, and the post-emergent. We're starting just regular feeding of the lawn throughout the season. So we're putting down the Anderson 1608 fertilizer, which also has Humic DG, which is awesome. So this has been sort of my replacement for my Lesco product I've been using this year. This product has humic acid in it. It has iron in it. It has sulfur in it. And that humic is going to be considered organic matter. So we're adding organic matter to the lawn, which is beneficial regardless. We can see anytime we add that humic, we're adding some organic matter, which is going to be great for the lawn. I don't know about you, but the lawn I have is about 20 years old. I have a lot of washout, and there's not a whole lot of stuff out there living in the lawn, dying, decomposing. It's sort of washed out old soil that's been here forever. So being able to add that organic matter in is what's going to help improve that soil over time. So we put half a bag of this 1608 fertilizer down on May 15th, which gives me half a pound of nitrogen. Then June 1st, bifenthrin again. Then we do the second half of the bag of the Anderson 1608 on June 15th, half a pound of nitrogen. One more treatment of humic. Again, this is sort of a bonus because there's really nothing else going on in this time frame. We're right now starting to enter the slower growing season as the temperatures increase. The next month, the same Anderson 1608, half bag. Bifenthrin again. We're now a couple months after the last treatment, so we apply bifenthrin again on August 1st. And then we do one more half bag of the 1608. So that 1608, we used 2 bags over the summer, and we applied half a bag every month throughout the season. Yes, it's going to be warmer, but we're not applying a pound of nitrogen. We're applying a half pound, which is light. So we're not going to get any sort of grass burning or any issues like with that. But we are going to steadily keep up the feed for the lawn throughout the growing season. Then we get into September 1st. There's really nothing going on September 1st. Now, if you wanted to go crazy, you could actually go in and add more humic here. And you could take, I could put another humic DG bag here and here. And the reason I'm doing this is, I don't want to be this already has me putting down product every 2 weeks. So this keeps it pretty simple. March 15th, I'm putting down half a bag of this. 2 weeks later on April 1st, I'm putting down half a bag of this. April 15th, half a bag. May 1st, 1 bag. So, I'm keeping the products, as simple as possible. Yes, I am I'm out there running the spreader every 2 weeks, but I'm not having to run the spreader, 3 times to put down 3 different products. I'm putting down 1 product every 2 weeks throughout the season, and those products vary depending on what the needs are. So there's a gap September. There's really nothing going on there as the warm temperatures start to ramp down. And then we get into another sweet spot. So September 15th. So September 15th, or that week of, or 2 weeks, between September 15th and October 1st, that's going to be the sweet spot for fall overseeding. And why is that? Well, first off, we can see that the soil temperature is less than 65 degrees. So above 65 degrees, it's going to be kind of hot for germination. So the below 65 is sweet, and the root growth is between 50 and 65. So we see here 1 month later is the optimum time to get those roots really going like crazy. So here on September 15th, now granted it's yellow, so that doesn't mean you can't overseed, but when you put it down, it's going to grow just at a slightly slower rate than it would if you were putting it down October 15th. But there's a reason for that. We want to extend this window of it growing before it starts to get cold outside. So on September 15th, the average soil temperature is 76 degrees. The prime soil temperature is less than 65. So, it's close, but it's not quite there yet. But on October 1st, we're down to about 67. So we're getting really close. And then by October 15th, we're past that. So these this month, or these 4 weeks between the last 2 weeks of September and the first 2 of October, is really the sweet spot for my particular zip code and the way that my temperatures work. So knowing that, on September 15th, if I wanted to overseed, that's when I'm going to do it. And that's the same thing we're doing this year in 2020. We're doing a lot of overseeding, some aeration, some dethatching, all that stuff, messing with the soil on September 15th or the week or 2 weeks right in that range. So at that time, we're also going to boost the phosphorus. So we go back to the same mesotrione product that we used in the spring for the same reasons. Number one, it's going to have the phosphorus in them that's going to help boost or drive that root growth. And if we want to grow roots, now's the time to do it. Now's the prime time to get those roots growing. So that's a great thing with that product, is it has that high phosphorus number. Then it's going to have the mesotrione in it. So the mesotrione is going to do a few things. We're going to get a pre-emergent at this time. So if we're jacking with the soil, if we're adding topsoil, or if we're doing a bunch of aerating and dethatching where we're digging the soil up, that's more prime real estate for weeds to start to creep in. So by using the mesotrione, we've got a pre-emergent being put down at that time to help keep those at bay. It's also a post-emergent. So all of the stuff that's been growing throughout the summer that maybe you haven't been able to hit with some sort of a hand sprayer or your own weed control products, this will also help knock those out. So by using mesotrione here, we can do a few things. We can do a pre-emergent and a post-emergent. And it's the same strategy as used in spring. We're putting a half bag down on September 15th. And then the next month, so 30 days later, and if you notice on October 15th, look at the green. The 50 to 65 range is prime for that root growth. So we're putting down the other half of the bag, which is going to give us that phosphorus boost. And we got a little bit more pre-emergent and post-emergent. So with this, we've got pretty darn good coverage of pre-emergent, post-emergent control, which should help reduce the amount of manual, spraying with a backpack you have to do around the yard. It also opens it up to allow us to do some spring overseeding. If I'm fighting a mole or if I have some area that washed out, I don't want to have to wait all the way to September because I used prodiamine or something harsh in the spring. By using the mesotrione, that gives me some flexibility that works well for my goals. So we put down the mesotrione on September 15th. Again, we see, the bifenthrin, which was layered in, which we covered earlier. And then we put down the second half on October 15th. Then we have nothing on November 1st. And then on November 15th, which is getting into the realm of the grass starting to severely slow. We remember we looked at the soil temps. The soil temperatures, where does it say here? Growth slows dramatically as temperatures approach freezing or 32 degrees. So we can see that here on December 15th, we're at 34 degrees, which is really close to that bare minimum. So by applying the last bang, the last fertilizer on November 15th, we can nourish the lawn and hopefully it could store up enough to make it through the winter, the best means possible until it gets its next feeding on March 15th of the following year. So this last feeding is a bit bigger. So this is the same product we were using during the middle of the season, but it's a full bag. So we see here that we're actually applying down 1 pound of nitrogen at that particular time versus all of the other applications, which were a half pound. So let's cover a few things. So first off, which I mentioned earlier, $404 is the total dollar amount that I'm going to budget for this particular season. At the top here, I spent $470 in 2020. So I'm actually reducing my budget a little bit by next year, and I think I'm going to have just as good, if not better, results. Now getting into the specifics for the yearly totals, this program gets me, remember this is for 8,000 square feet, I get 5.1 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet. That's absolutely perfect. The high-end goal is going to be between 4 and 5 pounds of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet per year, and this 5.10 gets me right on the number. So I fed steady all season, except for the end I gave it a little boost, but overall for the 12-month period, I'm right at the ideal amount to grow grass of cool season grasses. Phosphorus, not too worried about phosphorus, but over this year, I'll be putting down 2.2 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Most of that coming from the spring and fall applications of the Anderson's product with the mesotrione, which is sort of the quote-unquote starter fertilizer with the higher phosphorus numbers. But still, those numbers aren't too bad. That's the 2.2 is just fine. We could see this year in 2020 up here at the top, I put about 2 pounds on as well using my Lesco product. So it's pretty similar. Potassium. So potassium, that comes really with everything. All of the fertilizers are going to have a little potassium in it. We could see between 2020 and this year and 2021, they're about identical. 1.9 pounds or right at 2 pounds for next year per 1,000 square feet. Sulfur, I don't really track sulfur, but it sort of comes along for the ride from what I understand with some of the nitrogen sources. It is a booster. The nitrogens, helps the plants maintain their dark color, and it's used to create proteins, etc. So it's not bad to have, but it isn't something I'm necessarily tracking. We could see that is changing a bit from 2020 to next year. So overall, there are about 2.3 pounds of nitrogen put down in this year. Where next year, that's going down to a little over half pound. So that's going to be a little bit of a shift, which I'll want to keep an eye on and see if I notice any differences when those sulfur numbers go down. Next one is iron. So sulfur and iron seem to be used a lot for darkening. You know, a lot of the products, like I did notice in the Scott's program, they have sulfur in everything. So every time I'm applying their turf builder for in the spring, or the weed and feed, or the summer guard, all of these have sulfur in them. And I think the reason for that is because of its greening capabilities. I think the sulfur will help give you that darker color, so that's probably why Scott's has it in there. But they have no iron, which is different. You know, iron may be more expensive. I don't know. The Grass Pad program, the only product that has iron is their fall treatment, their Snowman product, which has some iron in it. But the iron seems to be, you know, Ironite. You know, there are products out there specifically for you to add iron to the lawn. So I think it's a good thing to have. And it's nice that a lot of these Anderson products have the iron built into them to give you that boost, even though I'm not specifically tracking. I'm not trying to hit a certain iron number, if that makes sense. So this year I'm putting down 0.6 or so pounds per 1,000 square feet. And next year it's 0.4. So it's reduced by a little, but I'm still getting a decent amount of iron. And the iron is hitting all season. Since the mesotrione product and the fertilizer we're using mid-season has some iron in it, the iron is being applied to the lawn steadily at the same time we're applying nitrogen throughout the season. So that's kind of beneficial. Let's see. I'm not going to cover really manganese. There's nothing really here we're tracking for that. It happened to be in the Lesco product, so it's in the chart. Humic acid. So with that same, remember, we're spending $400 next year to get all of this stuff. You know, allows me to get 9.25 pounds of humic acid for every 1,000 square feet of my lawn. That's pretty good. You know, this year I put about 7 pounds down, but for that amount of dollars, that amount of humic acid should be really beneficial to the lawn as the years and months go by. So we can see that every time we apply the Anderson's fertilizer here in the middle of the season, this stuff, whenever we apply this, you know, it has some humic acid built into it. But, and this, I don't know if this is the best view for this, but it's not a whole ton. So if we scroll over, let's see here. So it's 0.38 pounds per 1,000 square feet. So you get a little bit with that fertilizer product, but the vast majority of that is coming from these two applications right here of the Humic DG. So this Humic DG in and of itself, that's all it is. So this isn't a fertilizer, it isn't a weed control, it isn't anything. It's mainly just humic, and it's 70% humic. So out of this 40-pound bag, you know, 70% of that 40 pounds is humic acid. So when we put that down on the lawn, you know, we're getting, I think it's 3.5 pounds. So yeah, right here. So each bag of that spread over 8,000 square feet, applying 3.5 pounds of humic acid for that 1,000 square foot area. So at the end of the day, you know, 9.5 pounds of humic acid. Now you can't overdose on humic. It's really go as much as you want till your budget straps you. And I figured this was, you know, $400 is pretty decent. And almost 10 pounds of humic acid was pretty darn good for the season. And we'll see. You know, I've got a couple other open windows here in, you know, September 1st or November 1st, where if I wanted to apply something and I had extra funds, I'd plop more humic acid in here. You know, I'd pop some humic here and humic here, but all of the other stuff is covered. You know, I can't put any more fertilizer or chicken feed or any of that stuff in here. Not chicken feed, but like there was one product I was looking at that was a organic based chicken manure fertilizer, Well, once I can't really put anything that has any fertilizer in it because I'm already at my capacity. You know, I don't need to be going above 5 pounds of nitrogen per year. So the only things I would put in these 2 empty spots would be additional humic acid if I wanted to. So if I did that, let's say I did that here. Let me move this over. If I went in and put another pound of humic DG or a bag here and here, you know, of course, that's going to raise my budget by about $100 because each bag's 55. But then I have, you know, that's 16 and a half, 16, a little over 16 pounds of humic acid per 1,000 square feet that's getting put down. That's pretty bananas. So I could do that. I don't necessarily know if I will. You know, if I want to spend the extra $100, but you know, I'm still new to the humic game, so I want to see how much what I put down in 2020 and what I have planned for 2021, how beneficial that will be. But for the time being, this is what we're looking at. So, long story short, the Scotts program would run me $197.92 or $200 a year, and I don't have season-long pest control, so I'd have to add that. And I don't have any sort of soil conditioning, so I'd have to add that if I wanted to. But now if I double that and I go up and I spend my $400 a year, that includes season-long insect control, season-long organic matter being added, and a whole bunch of other goodies. You know, iron, you know, some of the other, you know, the higher nitrogen numbers overall. A lot of that stuff gets improved, but primarily, you know, you add organic matter, you add season-long pest control, and I'm adding, let's see, the Scotts program had me at about 3.5 pounds of nitrogen per year. So I'm adding 1.5 pounds of nitrogen as well to bump me up to 5. So it seems like a pretty good deal. And the only reason I keep going back to the Scotts one is just because it's something one of my neighbors used that, you know, he's been pretty happy with. So I've used it as a guide when wrapping my program for the next year around some of the other programs. So it may work fine for you. It may be great. But if you want to take it to the next level and you want to be a boss, then this may be the way you go. This is the way I'm going to go. So at the end of the day, you guys can do whatever you want to do, but this is what I'm going to do. And hopefully it pays dividends in the long run. So if you got any questions, you know, shoot me a comment, shoot me a message. I'll gladly share whatever I know and whatever I have. But for the time being, I've talked way too long and you guys are probably tired of hearing me. So peace out.